Well, great to have you all here this morning, and just shows your commitment to staying up to date in real time on key issues affecting our region, that you'd be here during the summer months. Our organization is very committed to staying on track monthly with this programming. In fact, this is really one of the programs we do all year long, and that's very purposeful because advocacy issues are constantly on this organization's radar. The summer months have had a number of interesting developments occur, and we wish to bring you some of those today. All of you are proven engaged people in this community, and I'd like to note that we have an opportunity for somebody within our organization to serve on a special project that is teed up by the City of Salem, Brian Martin, specific to wastewater and the like. If you have an interest, would you please connect with Jameson and I? This is a short-term project which your voice will contribute to some of the influences of what we're going to be taking on as a city as it pertains to wastewater. Director Martin has been wonderful to work with, and I assure your team your time would be valued. Again, if you have an interest in that, we are looking for a volunteer from our organization to step forward. It's going to get in motion pretty quick. In fact, it starts the week after next. And so if you're interested, if you convey it to myself or Jameson, would be appreciated. A couple special notes. First of all, today is Angela Woodland's first day at the helm at advocacy. She's been doing this since July 1st, but her first advocacy meeting as our president, and I'd like to certainly recognize past President Ted Ferry on an absolutely outstanding year. Second of all, Dan Johnson, this individual right here up front, has been an incredible staff member for us for almost 5 years. This is his last advocacy meeting as he is heading into a different season of his life at the end of July. So I want to thank Dan for all the work you've always provided us, Dan. And then finally, a dear friend and somebody that has really been quite reasonable, we've enjoyed partnering with, and that is Director Alan Pollock. We'll be wrapping up his service at Chariots this month. And Alan, on behalf of our organization, I just want to thank you so much for always engaging with us. And despite sometimes some challenging conversations alike, your professionalism and your ability to always engage and share fairly with our organization is noted. So thank you for your service to that organization for so many years. And we look forward to celebrating your retirement coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We got a great agenda today. And today we're going to kick off with the Salem Chamber's contract lobbyist, Nicole Palmateer Hazelbaker. Our organization obviously is very deeply involved in some of the political discussions that go on across our community, including many centered at the state level. Jameson Gideon leads our efforts there, and his time at state legislature is very helpful internally. But to have the power horse and the workhorse that is Nicole Palmateer Hazelbaker is important for our organization, not only to share our voice, but to hear directly from Nicole on what is occurring inside the state capitol. So Nicole, would you mind kicking us off this morning?
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will do my best to keep us on time, on task here. Good to see all of you. I don't think I've seen you since the primary election, at least not here in this setting, but it has been, as I was just saying beforehand to Krishna, this is usually kind of where lobbyists, we kind of glide a little bit. That's not this season. We are on it. We're going fast and moving quickly. We think that everybody knows it's just a season of discontent right now in the political landscape. Couple quick things from the election. We project that we will have 5 DSA House members come this next year. Tammy Carpenter and Beaverton won a very tight race there. That will change how the House interacts. It will change how the Democratic caucus interacts. It's definitely something that will be an interesting one to watch. And we saw Myrna Munoz, who's the sister of Leslie Munoz from the Woodburn House District. She defeated Senator Janine Salmon, that was one of the tightest races, the highest spending races. Candidate Munoz took out a sitting legislator. You don't see that very often. So as we all are hearing about, you're seeing it in the news, the face of politics is changing. And what's very interesting is my 30-second side note. What you're seeing, though, is not that dissimilar to what we saw in the presidential campaign. People want to be heard. They want different. They want to have action, not words. It isn't always about the money. It's often about the boots on the ground. And so we're watching this shift. And I've talked to a number of my colleagues, a number of people who are saying, the two groups who kind of brought President Trump into office and the groups that are kind of leading this movement, the Democratic Socialists, are sort of doing the same exact thing. They're way over here and way over here, but how they're getting through and moving into these positions, it's the same playbook. So it's an interesting trend for somebody like me, and unfortunately Ryan, who has to listen to me all the time. It's an interesting trend that we're watching, and we're seeing how it's changing campaigning, here on the ground all over, certainly in Oregon. We just came out of that Senate District 11, which is the seat held by current Senator Kim Thatcher. That is probably the most consequential race that's going to happen here this fall. That is the race between former Republican Representative Tracy Kramer and candidate Virginia Stapleton. That is one of the highest priorities of both parties in this entire state. I think Raquel would probably agree with me on that one. Wherever she went, I lost her. But it is one of the most consequential. It's going to be a close fight. It's going to be a lot of dollars in there. It's going to be a lot of engagement. I encourage all of you to be engaged in that, because that's incredibly important, in my opinion, for the Republican caucus to hold. So it will be one of the most watched races in this entire state this fall. We just came out of Ledge Days. Ledge Days was right before the Prosperity Council released their report, so everybody was sort of waiting to see what was happening in there. Not a lot of conversation about bills that are going to be filed, because nobody wants to show their cards yet, and they wanted to wait and see what else was coming. We do pre-session file by September 11th, and we expect that what we're seeing is some legislators really are encouraging us to try to get our bill requests in now, and some are really kind of like, no, because depending on what their campaign cycle is going to look like. We are going to see, I've heard this from every side and all over, we're going to see probably every revenue proposal you ever did hear of is going to come into this session, because what you cannot underestimate is the impact of HR1 in a state like Oregon. We've talked about that a number of times. Oregon has the third highest reliance on Medicaid of any state in the country. 1 out of 3 people in Oregon utilizes Medicaid for some form of their healthcare or services and supports in their home or in their community. Therefore, the changes that will come from HR1 are so impactful to the overall state budget. It will take money out of the state budget that's currently coming in from the federal government, and either the state has to find it or they have to make up for that in some sort of reduction. The governor has convened a work group. It's been going on for a little while, primarily providers, around what to do about HR1. That report was just released on Tuesday. It is a list of recommendations all across the board, everything from lowering the number of CCOs to changing pharmaceutical benefits to reducing some of the not required benefits that are currently received under Medicaid, all trying to get to a very large dollar amount that's going to no longer be coming into Oregon from the changes in HR, which is House Resolution 1. It is the biggest elephant in the legislative room, that dollar. Many legislators that are currently in office right now have never been in a situation where there's a cuts budget, a situation where there's not an excess of dollars. It's just not been that way. Langowski was the last governor who had to oversee broad-based cuts. He did an across-the-board reduction during that time. So it's been a while. And what you have is a lot of people who just don't know what do you do about that? Like, how do I do that? I don't know. And, of course, everybody has a long list of things that they believe are important and are a priority, and you're trying to answer your constituents. It changes how we operate in the building. It changes what they want to listen to. For example, there's usually a long list of exemptions or things like that that they kind of keep going through. This year, they're looking at every single one of them, one by one. So you cannot assume that, we always had this EMS tax credit. It's just going to go through. Every one of them is being looked at. Again, revenue proposals are all coming in as far as things that would raise revenue, otherwise known as taxes. Those kinds of proposals are going to be heavy in the session. And there is certainly a conversation around what they want to entertain as far as requests, because there always will be. But what is it that they're going to be willing to do when they're also going to be looking at reducing the budget in a significant way? So it is the biggest conversation that's happening. Every legislator that I meet right now, that's the first thing they want to talk about, which is a bummer because I don't always want to talk about it. The Oregon Prosperity Council has released, I hope had a chance to look at it. If not, I know James hasn't, can certainly forward it to you. It said all the things that you all know so well. Oregon is the 49th in the nation in employment, 5.2% unemployment, which is above the national average. We all know these truths to be self-evident. They gave a number of recommendations. Some of them are kind of interesting. Business Oregon transformation, tax policy revisions, looking at research and development, the estate tax, the CAT tax, QSBS, that disconnect, looking at reconnecting it, creating a working group on tax reform, permitting reform, regulatory burdens, coming up with cap and invest, site readiness, all those things. I think what we're all sitting back watching is saying, what are you going to do about it? Was this really just an exercise for a campaign season, or is this a genuine effort to make a difference in Oregon's economic competitiveness? Don't know. You know, the governor is also in certainly what will be a highly public campaign cycle with on the other side of Christine Drazen, Senator Drazen. So that's a rough year to be in when you're starting to talk about things like tax reform. What will come out of this? And I think if you read any of the pundits, everybody's saying the same thing. There's some low-hanging fruit like forming Business Oregon. You can do that without a lot of controversy. But when you start to get into things like permitting, regulatory, tax policy, those kinds of things, those are a lot harder to do, and they come with a lot more controversy. The proposals that were around tax reform were not unanimously supported. The rest of the report was, but tax reform was not. The two members of the Prosperity Council that are from the labor community did not support those because, as we've talked about before, they have a different opinion of how Oregon's doing. They would say, we're no problems, we're fine, keep doing what you're doing and start investing more in state-supported services. So certainly some dissension there. The Prosperity Council has suggested that they should convene a nonpartisan tax reform working group to develop a long-term reform proposal implemented in 29, looking at a more balanced tax system, reducing over-reliance on income tax and funding essential public service. The conversation around sales tax, it comes up kind of over here. It will be front and center this session. It's going to be right here. And I had a conversation with one of the co-chairs and I said, well, if you're talking sales tax, does that mean like when I lived in Idaho, I didn't have an income tax, I had a sales tax? Like, okay, I can kind of live with that. And she was like, what? You know, I think, and I mean, that's the trick. Is there a trade-off or do you just want it all? One thing that I've been told by the leadership and the Democrats, though, is that they are extremely, extremely present and aware that any type of tax proposal that does not have broad-based bipartisan support and the support of the public, as she said, exactly, she said it will take exactly the amount of time to walk from the Capitol down to the courthouse for that to get filed and go to referral. And they know it. They're very aware of that. The transportation package told them that loud and clear. That's something that's very specific and directly impacts people's bottom line right now is something that people are not interested in. And so that is the challenge that they have before them. There are a number of other proposals around local governments and their funding stability, personal income tax structure, other things like that, higher education. So kind of these broad-based proposals, but getting around the edges of this idea of the things that I hear all of you speak of so much about the burden of taxes on the ability of business owners to be able to be successful in their local communities. So we're going to watch and see. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see if they do file any bills from this, if they do go forward with any proposal. The conversations will continue along with the conversation happening around what kind of transportation package. No different than this conversation. They also are very aware what happened last time. How do they get to something that would potentially have more revenue in a way that isn't going to go right to the ballot? I would say the ballot, though, is that's the control of it. That's the check and balance. And that is the power of the people to be able to make their voice heard. So those are the quick things to look. I'm right on time. Good for me. Yep. I talk really fast. Can you tell what I do for a living? But I am you should see me buying a car. I would be happy to answer any questions. You can always reach out to me by email. We're gonna get an idea in September. We go back in for 3 days. Those will be the 3 days right before we file the bills. To remember that when you file a bill, the bill request belongs to the legislator, goes through legislative council. It is attorney-client privilege. People always ask me, well, what are the bills? I want to see the bills. You don't get to see the bills. You get to see the bills either when they're officially become a bill, which is in January when we gavel in for the session and they all become public, or if a legislator chooses to share it, but they don't have to. It is no different than any legal document that you work with your attorney. That is how they are protected. So just a little bit of background on that. With that, thank you so much.
Nicole, before we turn it over to Q&A, I've been getting information hit by a lot of the education pundits. Can you give us a preview of what's going to be talked about as far as K through 12 education in this upcoming long session?
Sure. So as you're all, I'm sure, also heard about there's two issues in education, the funding, which is always the issue, and accountability. What are we doing about the current state of outcomes in public education? Last session, Senator Solomon, who you might know, was just recently voted out, and Representative Ricky Ruiz put forward a proposal that said we need to look at this. We are not asking for the kind of accountability, and they're Democrats. They're asking for the kind of accountability we need to have for our students to succeed. They just got obliterated for that proposal. And the things they were looking at was there's something called the quality education model. Maybe we should update that. How do we ask for schools to give us more information? How do we kind of hold them more accountable? It went nowhere, and it was extremely divisive. However, the conversation continues, and certainly I would say, you know, as a parent, and parents are, you know, you want to really stir some people up, boy, get to the parents. Here we go. And I think that piece on accountability is going to be one of the big conversations. But how do you do it? Certainly, labor has traditionally been on the side saying that we're protecting teachers, we're protecting their seniority, we're protecting position. We have a situation where most public schools are losing kids right now. They're having less kids, but they've never been greater staffed. They are right now. And anybody who owns, you know, who owns a business would tell you that is not going to pencil out very long, and it's not. And so what do we do about that? But how do you, again, find something that's going to pass and get through the legislature and it's not going to go to ballot? That piece of accountability is going to be just conversations this session.
Cool. Open up for questions from the floor for Nicole Palmateer, Hazelbaker.
Easy.
Raquel?
Thank you, Nicole, for the update. Do you have a link to that report out of the governor's office?
Oh yeah, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Additional questions for Nicole? Okay, we'll keep our powder dry today. Well, thank you for your work on this, and we certainly appreciate you representing the Salem Chamber and our concerns from the small business community here in Salem. It's a pleasure to turn over to very capable people that really can make you feel pretty inspired with where our city could be going in conversations. Ward 1's Paul Tigan is our Salem City Councilor, a hockey player out of Minnesota, so he's obviously a great guy. Tigan has taken on the Citizen Budget Committee in his role prior to serving as Salem City Councilor, and certainly engaged with our organization before. Our city manager is Kristen Namburi. Krishna has been very engaged with our organization, open to hearing the thoughts of the small business community, engaging with us. The city just wrapped up its annual budget process, and both of them are going to bring us some insight of where we're heading now, some pitfalls and things that we need to be looking forward to or not looking forward to in the very near future. Thank you both for being here this morning, and we appreciate you sharing your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Good morning, everybody. Paul Tigan, your Ward 1 City Councilor. We have a slideshow for a little deck with some roadmap for our conversation. We'll pull that up. I've been on council for about a year and a half. Like Tom said, I spent 2 terms on the Citizen Budget Committee, and 2 of those years I was the chair of that committee. So I suppose when the conversation's about budget, I'm your guy to call. And really, I want to start today just talking about what we heard and honestly what we're hearing. Continue here. The budgeting cycle for the city is a continuous process. We started the new budget year on July 1st, but as soon as this year starts, we just continue to go through the process. If you can go, I think, a couple slides in. There we are. So what we heard, really, the other way is how we heard it, right? Coming to forums like this, I think between the 8 councilors and the mayor, we spend a lot of time in neighborhood associations. We have lots of daily conversations. We have flooded email inboxes that we're looking at every single day. So we hear a lot of different feedback about where the city's headed from our constituents, and it's an ongoing process. One of the ways, though, that I really feel is important to anchor in a lot of our decisions is the annual State of the City survey that DHM does for us. We can try to drive the city on anecdata, I like to call it, stories that we hear from people. But it's really important. The city spends, invests our funds in doing a statistically significant survey. And so we, in open conversation with the council, you'll hear me refer to it quite a bit. And over the years, homelessness and public safety have remained the priorities that we hear from our community. It's down from where homelessness as a top concern is down from where it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago in the 2022 era, but it's still, 43% of the residents of the city name it as the number one priority for the city to deal with. It's not a problem that we can quote unquote solve, but we do a lot to manage it and manage the impacts of homelessness in our community. The second one being public safety, and a lot of the answers that people give get lumped into the concern of public safety. As we'll talk about today, the way that we've really thought about that in this current budget cycle is addressing the impact of drugs and honestly the outfall of Measure 110 in our community. And really just, I think the way that also boils down is how people view the community, how they perceive the community. We hear from people that they want it to be cleaner, they want to feel safer. And so that's really been translated into the strategies that Krishna will talk about during her time and that we've funded with this year's budget. And this last point, the importance of keeping our core services. There's two things there. One is that we want to do what we're tasked to do well. And so I think things like the overhaul of the emergency response system, the ambulance service, changes in the way that the fire department is operated is an example of maintaining our core services. The other element is don't go around picking up new responsibilities that are someone else's. Based on the feedback we get from people, we could go around picking up new responsibilities as the city left and right. And honestly, we don't have the funding or the people power to do those things. And so sometimes that leads to a hard conversation where, hey, this is not the city of Salem's responsibility. And honestly, you don't want us to pick it up because it's just going to end up costing us more in the future. So I would think about things like our ongoing conversations with ODOT, right? You don't want us picking up the responsibility of ODOT. Even though it does intersect directly with a key concern of the community. So what did we do with all that information that we heard? It's sort of baked in here, and Krishna and Lori are going to give some more details about it. But those prioritizing our safety and livability investments are a key element of what we did. Now, 99% of the city's budget doesn't change year in and year out, right? We're running an operation that is supposed to be sustainable, dependable. But there are some investments that we were able to make this year that are focused on livability and safety. And certainly adding community policing officers downtown, some drug enforcement officers, and continuing the investment in the homeless services team and the Clean Salem teams are an example of that. We're fortunate and we'll take every opportunity to thank the community that when we passed the livability levy and gave ourselves some operating space, the library and the parks, it gave us the ability to make the kind of investments that we made this year in public safety. So I just want to walk through this. This slide is really intended to show you what was the community priority, what did we do, and where'd the money come from. So I mentioned the community policing investments. And I think this actually has some connection what we heard with Nicole as well. When a government like ours comes up with a new source of revenue, it really is exercise in trust. People want to know that the money that's being raised through that fee or through that tax is going to something that they've asked for, that it's not just going into the black hole without any accountability. And when you look at the way that we've significantly changed the parking fund, we've raised a significant amount of revenue for that. And the number one and two things that we're paying for out of that parking fund is for round-the-clock safety officers at the parkades and for these 2 downtown police officers. That's what we've heard from the community, is that people want to feel safer downtown. They've paid into a fund for downtown. This is what they get for it. So that, to me, that exercise of explaining, what that, $1.50 per hour gets you is really important. And then on the right-hand side, you can see some of these other funding streams. We're, I would say, sadly fortunate to be getting money from the opioid settlement. It's important that this money is coming to our community for the destruction of the opioid crisis. The way that we're using that funding is to fund our homeless services team and to help people who have been impacted by that, and also help our community, what has been impacted by that. The REACH team is also as you can see, a partnership with Marion County, and the other investments here on for livability in terms of the clean team, things like that, those also come out of the general fund. It's really important to note, and this is going to be the community conversation, is that we don't have a long-term sustainable fund to maintain investments in our homeless services team, in the clean team, or the REACH team. But I think part of what we're trying to do with the funds that we have this year is to demonstrate the efficacy of these groups, and show that when new revenue comes, we know how to put it towards things people are asking for, and then we can continue to have the community conversation about whether these are worthwhile investments in the long term. I think at that point, I'd hand it over to Krishna to walk through a few more of the strategies behind some of these actions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next slide, please. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having us here today. I'll briefly talk about how we approach the fiscal year 27 budget, and also I'll introduce the downtown vision framework that we actually introduced to council back in April. So I thought this might be a great way to give that introduction, and a quick update on the financial roadmap work session, the upcoming work session in August and September. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this year, the budget approach was focused on being disciplined with the choices we make today so that we reduce the cost escalations. And also the goal is to reduce long-term cost of providing city services. So that was kind of the focus for us. So in order to kind of get to that, we focused on 4 different areas. And the first one is the protecting core services, but we also know that we have to find that right balance between proactive and the reactive services. So that was kind of definitely took some effort on that. And then the second piece of it is the maintaining financial sustainability. That has been a huge focus for this year's budget. So I think the key is we wanted to kind of make sure that we have a balanced budget for the next 2 years, and also with no deficit. And we also were talking about introducing and investing into some new services that the community has asked for. So what that resulted into, the leadership team worked very hard to come up with the targeted reductions, and that also included some staffing adjustments. So we were happy about introducing a budget that has no deficit for the next 2 years, and also continue to invest into the services the community is asking for us to do. And the third part of it that kind of combined with the second one is continuing to innovate. So you guys have heard about our pilot programs, and that has become part of how we were providing services to the city, to the community. I think testing new approaches, evaluating what works and what doesn't, and then before we start investing long-term investments into these services, we wanted to be sure, and the council wanted to be sure, that whether it is working or not. I think this approach has worked really well for us over the past 18 months. And also finally, I think it's important that we don't wait until the crisis happens. We want to continue, we want to start the work in building that financial roadmap for the city and with the different services and the different funds. And I think that's important for the sustainability and then the success of Salem. Next slide, please. I know Councilor Tigan already talked about the budget priorities. I'm not going to get in detail there, but what I wanted to highlight is the one area that has been, one is that has been important for the city, but also exciting and inspiring is, bringing innovation into our service delivery strategy. And it is, we don't want that to be afterthought. For me, it's important that it becomes part of the City of Salem DNA. Like, this is how we want to provide services. So bringing innovation into our service delivery strategy has been an exciting thing to kind of see the outcome that we are seeing with some of the programs. And I think, and I always talk about, like, I think reimagining services, that because we can't be providing the services the same way we have done, doing things differently. And I think improving internal coordination, that has been a large focus for us, but also building those partnerships with our community and our stakeholders. And Chamber has been an important part of that partnership for us. So we have been focusing on that, and that has been very helpful for us. If you can go to the next slide, please. That has been very helpful for us, with that progress. This is like the Safe, Clean, and Healthy Salem. You might have seen this tool or the plan before, so I'm not going to get into the details, but what I wanted to talk about was the pace, and then the collaboration went into this effort, right? So the council, we started having conversations with the council about the importance of moving forward with a pilot program in July of last year. And in October, council approved supplemental budget mid-year. And then and we implemented Safe, Clean, Healthy Salem in November, and then the REACH program in January. I appreciate very much the Chamber's generosity in helping us with the pilot program. And then Marion County has been a great partner for us to work on the REACH pilot. So this is kind of a very clear example of what we can do when we kind of come together as a community and as different partners. So from the time we started conversations about it to the implementation, it was a 4-month time frame. So we went with a very high speed on it. So I'm excited. I was happy about we all were very happy about the fact that we could move on. Just kind of an example, and I said this before, we were going to start in January, and Councilor Tigan said, no, why not we start a little bit early on this because of what we are hearing from the community. So that gave us that boost to say, no, we can do this, right? So we started that in November timeline. So those early conversations, and again, the diagram is hard to kind of read. We can go back to the slide. Those early conversations had several things in it. Talked about the crime prevention, talked about the council had conversation on public safety, crime reduction, cleaning, HSD, drug enforcement, the REACH team, ambassador program, public restrooms. It has like all of the components that are with the Safe, Clean, Healthy Salem. Then it came to how do we implement that for the next couple of years, and we deliver some services from that conversation. And we didn't want that to be just a diagram, but we wanted to be able to deliver some services with that. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So I know Councilor Tigan mentioned about some of the stuff that we talked about, what we implemented, but we deployed HSD, Clean Team, and the REACH program as part of this year's budget. We are extending that program for another 12 months. And then also Prevent, Treat, and Enforce. We launched that program, and Lori will be talking about the prevention side of it in a minute. But part of that is we are also adding 2 additional officers that focus on the drug enforcement, and 2 additional officers to focus on the community policing. So that's kind of what next year we are heavily focusing on areas the community said priorities. And then with the next slide, please. And this is the one thing, graphic that I wanted to introduce today, because we definitely would like to collaborate with the Salem Chamber and the downtown community on this. And this is a a downtown vision framework that we introduced to council in April. So this is to establish that shared understanding for the council and the community about what does this overall downtown framework looks like. Apologize for the colors a little bit. Now I'm seeing that it's difficult to read, but the purpose of the framework is to organize the work that we collectively as a community are doing in 3 different strategic areas. And part of that is when we focus the work in those 3 different areas, that helps us to create safe, vibrant, and welcoming community. And so the first, the strategic pillar or the area of focus is the safety and support. We talked about the safe, clean, healthy Salem. That's kind of part of that. The second is the environment and experience, and that is your infrastructure in downtown. What does it feel and look like on a day-to-day basis when somebody visiting downtown? And the third is the activation and economic vitality. And this is the importance of investing into like events and opportunities that create reasons for people to visit downtown. So that graphic also highlights, we know the areas the city leads. There are areas the community partners lead, but there are areas that we work together. We can also see, without getting into it, is like they're not equally developed across all these 3 areas. So that kind of gives an opportunity to look at, to say, okay, where should we be focusing on in order to create that a robust framework for the community to prosper. So these are just the initial observations from staff. Our goal is to reach out to the different stakeholders and the community partners, and we want to finish this framework. We want to refine this framework. So we see this as an opportunity to work with our community and partners to build more comprehensive framework and a shared vision. And also the other important piece for me is, I think this also creates a shift in how we approach things. Instead of dealing with individual programs and projects, we would like to get into a more organized, coordinated framework. So this kind of gives you that. So when we are talking about a individual project, let's look at how it could be as we move forward. So this is also a great way to bring city resources and our partners together. I think your outcome is going to be much more impactful if we all could be on the same page about how to move forward with it, with this vision. So that's kind of our attempt. I know I'm going to hand it over to Lori for the prevent, treat, and force. She'll be, I think, focusing on the prevention side of it more. Before I hand it over to Lori, I do want to kind of mention, I know some of you come to the council meetings. This is kind of one of those examples why those council conversations are important, why the community input is important. As part of the Safe, Clean, Healthy Salem, I know Councillor Matthews is not here, but he was the one who brought up the importance of the drug enforcement, because that was the number 2 thing on the list of priorities for the community. The survey showed that the Salem has to focus on reducing the drug abuse. And so Councillor Matthews brought that up. And then Councillor Tigan made some comments about the prevention and the treatment side of it. And then Lori Shaw showed me the work that she was doing around the prevention. So that kind of gave us like, we can't take a complex issue like this and kind of focus on one area, right? We have to be getting into that from multiple angles. And so that kind of initiated the Prevent, Treat, and Force initiative. So this is also another, to me, is another great example of the art of listening to what the community has to say, and then also getting all different perspectives about. So this gave us a really great solution. And I'm personally excited about what we can do with this. they're making great progress. The team is making a great progress on this. And then we are going to get the drug enforcement officers as soon as we can. With that, I'm going to introduce Lori. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So again, I'm Lori Shaw-Casares. I'm the opioid prevention coordinator, fully funded by opioid settlement dollars. So as Counselor said, we're grateful for that additional funding that's come in, so that we can be a little bit more aggressive in taking action to address this issue in our community. As Krishna mentioned, we are building a similar framework with Prevent, Treat, and Enforce. I call it PTE, as we did with Safe, Clean, and Healthy. And with that initiative, this again is to address substance use disorder, misuse, and related issues, but looking at it from all three of those angles at the same time in a coordinated system, again, as Krishna mentioned. So it's very much a different approach, maybe with the exception in the past of no meth, if you remember that, not in our neighborhood. And so we're looking at a longer term, more sustainable approach to it, because there's more than one opioid, for example, in my focus. And substances overall, obviously, goes well beyond opioids. So this is a way to focus on this, to have better outcomes, as well as we are choosing to focus heavily on addressing prevention with children, youth, and young adults. Not to say that prevention isn't needed across the board with all ages, because it is, especially when we're talking about opioids. Just for 2027, not the greatest news, but we just another report come out. Local law enforcement has been saying this for a while, but the Oregon and Idaho high intensity drug trafficking area threat assessment report, that's the longest title for that, just said that in 2027 we will again be addressing fentanyl and methamphetamine in Oregon as one of our most significant, or two of our most significant substances, and that includes Salem. So it is an ongoing focus of ours with resources at all levels of government, and then think of it from the impact on treatment, on schools, on neighborhoods, and that sort of thing. So it's important to take on this more comprehensive approach to it. Also local essence data. I could give you stats for days, but just locally, we, for example, with opioid specific and overdoses, we know that males are double the rate of females in terms of accessing the ER, or paramedics in the field addressing the initial emergency response. We're seeing 25 to 44-year-olds have the highest rate of opioid overdoses in our county. All ages, though, are deeply affected by this. And I hate to say this, sadly, but even down in our numbers are showing down to the age of 9 years old. So this is pressing. This is important. We can't have that at all. We need to, start to be more aggressive in saving lives. Prevention is a huge piece of that. So it's something that we know at the city we can't do alone. We're at the table. We're going to champion and drive this, but we're really inviting the different sectors, including the business sector, to be at the table with us to begin to figure this out. And so I have some thoughts today on what that might look like for entry points for everyone, but I wanted to just kind of emphasize, the sober reality of what we're still looking at locally. You can go to the next slide. Right now with the strategy, we are in phase 1, which is a little more discovery. It's a lot of mapping what our current resources are in our community. What are the assets? Who are the groups already doing this hard work? Clarifying roles among different government agencies and nonprofits in the area. And one of the ways we're doing all of that is through this very hard to read assessment engagement tool. On the screen, it does not do well because there's a lot of information on there. You can access this tool in English and Spanish at the QR code on the flyer. So there's a landing page for that at the City of Salem. And this tool is something you can look at and download, this flyer, as well as a online feedback form. So if anybody has lived experience, work experience, or any other feedback and insight that you would like to provide, we welcome that ongoing. This is an ongoing engagement kind of a thing. It's not just during our discovery phase. We want to continue to hear back from the general public on this particular subject. Quickly looking at the tool, just so you know what you're looking at. Far right blue column is just, again, the goal of lowering substance use and improving our overall health in our community. Obviously, you see the prevent, treat, and enforce rows. We kind of used high level wording for this. We didn't get it would be impossible to be super comprehensive, but you'll see existing roles and programs and activities that the city does, that the community does. And then the far right are gaps that we have begun to identify already. And so we are still engaging with key stakeholders to learn more about where gaps in the system are. And it's something that will help guide as we decide on action steps together at the table together for the future. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So the National Institute of Drug Abuse continues to say that for every dollar invested in evidence-based prevention programs can save up to $65 in future costs associated with substance use disorder and misuse. And that's because they're addressing risk factors. These are adverse experiences for young people, but this is for everybody. This applies to everybody, whether these adverse experiences are personal, social, environmental. There's a lot of causes, as we all know. The more and the earlier we target risks, and the more and the earlier we increase protective factors in individuals in our community, protective factors being, I always say, building blocks. This means skills, positive experiences, mentorship, trusted relationships with others for young adults, as well as peers. Knowledge, just general knowledge and awareness. This builds a more resilient person, and that lowers the likelihood for risky behavior in the future. It doesn't eliminate, but it lowers it. That also means it offsets future financial losses. If we're looking at it from a money side, because of what we often see with addiction all along the way, costs created there, as well as just other, generally speaking, high risky behaviors. So it's an important thing to address. Finally, how do you enter into all of this? Ways to engage. I want to stress, first of all, you're in this room today at an advocacy meeting in the morning. You're a chamber member. You are already volunteers and leaders in this community. You go the extra mile. You're going above and beyond, and we recognize and value that and appreciate that. I think we are all aligned that we want this place to be a better place. And so because of that, I don't want to add more to your plate. That's not what I'm looking to do today, unless you want more, of course, added to your plate. And we would welcome that meeting. But I do want to provide some entry point options for you that are kind of scaled to consider in the future as we move forward with this. It can be, I kind of have three ideas: amplifying, incorporating, or joining forces on a deeper level. So it can be something as easy as just sharing out city and county substance use awareness campaign information with whatever means, however you like, websites, social media. It may be an event that you have. It's something that you're already able to easily take and share out. Incorporation can be prevention information in your staff meetings. It could be a training that you want to bring to your own employees for their own health and well-being. It could be in support of parent ed, depending on what you do. I would encourage leveraging already your chamber resources. I know Mary Louise and Ryan are here. They both have started a nonprofit organization addressing opioid prevention. It's Fentanyl Free Oregon. And they have been active in engaging with the city. They're one of our stakeholders helping to build capacity in our community to get more of this awareness and information out. So they would be somebody who could help you coordinate. We're happy to help with something that you're wanting to do within your own businesses internally or with your customers or other stakeholders and network that you work with. Joining forces in a deeper way would be the third action. That could be something like sponsoring PSAs. It could be helping put up awareness vinyl banners at sports events that you already support in some way. Perhaps there's somebody on your staff looking for a unique leadership development, a skills development opportunity, or has a passion for this particular issue because of a personal impact that they've had with substance use disorder. We would welcome to connect with them and work with them. Really going deep would be workforce development opportunities for young people. I always love the opportunity to throw that out there. It could be job shadows, it could be mentoring, it could be something that sparks the idea that they could be an entrepreneur someday. Those kinds of actions are all prevention work. And so it doesn't have to be directly talking about opioids all the time to kids, especially, excuse me, you know that most kids don't want to hear all the time, don't do drugs, be careful what, you're consuming. Sparking ideas of what they can do in their future is primary prevention. So, perhaps there's something that would bubble up from this group. I've heard Green Acres. I think I've heard that some business owners already talk about potential workforce development opportunities for younger people. We would be happy to help with, again, driving that, because that's something that's a prevention-oriented effort that would benefit our young people in a huge way. So again, it can be direct, but it can also be indirect in that way. It's all prevention. So I don't have a lot more time, but I want you to hear, with everything I just threw out, this is an invitation to enter into this initiative with us. And however and wherever you would like to enter in, we really welcome it because we need you. So appreciate your time.
So Laura, I'm going to just add quickly something.
Sure.
We will be taking information to council pretty soon on the progress that we have made so far. And it is actually the city team is kind of going full press on this. And it's exciting to see how the community partners are also kind of excited. And I met with Ryan and the team. And several partners are on board already, and the team kind of already finding entry points into different areas. So there is like really actionable stuff that is coming, and adding that with the drug enforcement. We are excited to see what we can do in 12 months. So thank you.
Thank you, all three of you, for your presentations. Let's open it up to the city team, and you can choose your topic.
So, Paul, really appreciate you stepping up and leading that budget committee. I couldn't imagine being on
Yeah. Thanks, Rich.
Understanding the doom loop.
Yeah.
I'm sure you that studied that. I guess I would ask you, where do you see Salem in that doom loop? And then what are you and your committee doing to stop that doom loop and stopping additional fees with that?
Yeah, I think people have a different idea of what the doom loop is. We've talked about a population doom loop. Have we reached some sort of, apex of our growth? I want to push back on that idea. Not that it's not true, but if it is true, we need to do something to change it. I really feel like growth is a continued important part of our community. And so one of the things that we struggle with as a budget committee is this idea that we're running a city on essentially the same amount of people that we had in right at the end of the Great Recession, right? We have the same number of firefighters servicing 40,000 more people today as we did in 2010, right? We haven't grown our fire department, but we've grown our population. And so the kinds of innovations that Christian is talking about that we've really seen in that basic category of fire response is really important, because if we can't, we can't just go out and hire, and put on staff 12 more firefighters tomorrow. Like, it's not possible with the resources that we have, but we want the community to keep growing. So in order to sort of close that service gap, it has to be innovation. And some of the things that the fire department has done, moving to an automatic aid system with our fire response partners. For those who haven't followed that, it's essentially, it used to be City of Salem responded in the City of Salem. And if they needed extra help, we were at the end of our capacity, then we could call Kaiser, or then we could call Marion County. And we've changed that so that the closest resource is always dispatched, regardless of what the system is like. So that's a innovation in our response that essentially squeezes a little bit more out of our current capacity. It used to be, before July of 2025, that we sent a fire company to 97% of calls in the city. You always saw a paramedic fire truck go out to almost every call in the city. And the innovation is that we came up with a new triage system, so we don't do that anymore. Now the number is less than 70% of calls have that engine going with it, responding, and then that frees that engine to actually respond to a higher priority call later. So it's those sorts of innovations that Christian and her team are doing in between the budget cycles that are super important to maintain a responsive community services. To your question of how long will it get us? How much juice is there in that lemon to squeeze if we also want to continue to grow our community? We can't add another 35,000 people to this community as is projected between now and 2035 without adding another fire company. It's impossible. Like, there's not that much juice in that lemon. So what I want to know and have a continued conversation about is that, yes, we want to have economic development. I think that's going to be a focus of this year's conversations is, yes, we want to use Salem's advantageous position compared to, say, Portland. I work for a company that's based in Portland. I think it's very difficult to run a business in downtown Portland right now. And if I could convince my boss to move our headquarters to Salem, he'd be in a better tax advantage position. If we want to continue to encourage people to move to Salem and grow Salem, at some point we have to recognize the juice is going to run out of the lemon in order to maintain just the number of people that we have. So hopefully that's a little bit of a rambling response, but hopefully it gets to your question.
Kel, John, Scott, Dick.
Thank you. Paul, this might be better for you. What's the amount of the opioid settlements that we get on an annual basis or a biennial basis from the state?
It doesn't come from the state. It comes right from the settlements themselves. And I think it's about $7 million a year. So to the city.
Right.
So, and remember, where does that money come from? It's really important to remember that the city sued and joined lawsuits with the people and the companies who profited from opioids. It's the drug manufacturers. It's companies right in our community. It's Walmart. It's Walgreens. They were sued for their role in distributing those drugs in our community. And rather than face accountability in a court, they settled those lawsuits. And that money comes to us and it's controlled. It can't just go into the general fund. We have to spend it on things that address the opioid settlement, or that address the things that were in the settlement itself, which refer to opioids. But that money isn't from the federal government. It's from the companies who profited off the terror that they wreaked upon our communities.
Past President Miller.
I appreciate your answer to Rich's question, and what you stated that is, and I don't think you meant this, so I must be taking it wrong, but it kind of came across as that we added 40,000 people, we added no revenue. Those 40,000 people live in houses that pay property taxes.
Yeah, no, I didn't say we didn't add any revenue. I said we didn't add any additional firefighters. I'm talking about the number of people who do the actual city service.
And in that 40,000 people came with revenue.
Right.
So why was the revenue not available to add service?
Well, I think the cost of providing the services goes up year over year. Some of those things are way out of our control, and PERS, that sort of thing. But so the cost of you know hiring a firefighter and paying a police officer is more than it was in 2012. So there's just that particular level of growth. The other thing is that when people come into our city, the money that they make, the incomes that they generate, that isn't funding that comes to the city, right? That goes to the state through income taxes. What comes to the city is their property taxes, and those property taxes are, as we know, constrained in their annual growth.
As a guy who pays a lot of property taxes,
Yeah.
I understand it's constrained in terms of what it could be, but it doesn't seem very constrained to me. My property taxes, whatever year, well. So, yeah, appreciate that clarification.
Yep.
Scott, Director Friedman.
Yeah, good morning. You mentioned the city not tackling things that aren't there. And the example you gave was ODOT, yet every slide I've seen is focusing on for downtown, focusing on trying to reinvigorate it. And the single largest light in the city of Salem happens to be under those two bridges that large market downtown. It just seems foolish that we're not proactively pushing on that harder or investing money in that area to clear that up. Can you talk about that a little bit, how we're dancing around?
Yeah, I'll let Krishna answer that. I would say that even if we're not the ones, we don't have the authority to enforce trespass under the ODOT bridge, and we're not spending, exorbitant amounts of our money to clean it up. It doesn't mean we're not working with ODOT. So I'll let Krishna address that.
Yeah, I just kind of, so we have been working with ODOT over the past few months, and our conversations have been very constructive. So one of the things that we did talk about is coming to an IGA or like a MOU to kind of see how those properties need to be maintained. We also talked about getting something to council in August. The goal is to get that IGA between ODOT and the City of Salem on how those properties are going to be maintained to council for discussion in August. So we are hoping that we are kind of going to make some progress on it. What you will see within the next few months, there are plans to make improvements in those areas. And I don't want to be ahead of the council, and I want to make sure that we go through the right process before it. So you will see some changes there within the next couple of months. Yeah.
What's the reason for this extended time? I feel like this is year 3 or 4 of this problem, and sitting down and having conversations and task orders and things. What's the barrier of not to getting it, to getting any sort of forward movement in a time frame that's recent?
I don't want to talk about what happened in the past. I'm just going to talk about what we are doing right now, right? So I think in April or May time is when ODOT did come to the table to come to an agreement on this. Since then, I think it was like mid-May. And so we are in July right now. And our goal is to take this to council in August. I'm excited about that agreement being in place, and that we can have that in place and we can start maintaining those properties. Between ODOT and us, we'll have a partnership to take care of those properties differently.
Yes, I'll follow. And I know there's a couple people, Jonathan, I'll get you right after Dick. A little follow-up to it, but it's kind of like Jello. If you close those properties off, this doesn't go away. Where do our friends and neighbors on the street ultimately go to reside? I want to caution all of us is, yes, I understand that. I drive past there every single day, multiple times. But these individuals will go somewhere. And what is the game plan of the city prior to us just locking that whole area up? What is the game plan for relocation?
So I'll take that. I know Councilor Tigan mentioned a
I've
little
got
bit
ideas,
about
but
it, but I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and we have conversations with the council too, as there are different things when it comes to homelessness. The city's, responsibility is to manage, and then you have the other agencies or organizations that are supposed to work on addressing homelessness. I don't want to make any wrong promises here that the city will be in a position to address homelessness. And what we are trying to do is to manage homelessness, right? So as we are kind of working through, the key is, I know DJ is here, so working with those service providers to connect those individuals with the right resources, especially those who are willing to take those resources. And I think that's kind of, to me, the starting point. And as far as how do we address homelessness, Tom, that's $1 million question, right? Like, so
Well, it's $1
I-
billion.
yeah,
that's $1 billion question. So
And there's
so
service providers that have had those dollars.
yeah, I don't have that response on that. I don't know if Councilor Tigan want to add anything to it.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just say, the ODOT bridges that folks are most concerned about, that's in Ward 1, and when those have been quote unquote cleaned up in the past, those folks do end up in our neighborhoods, and so I think Tom's absolutely right. It's a balloon, it's Jello that gets squeezed. So in terms of, I think the right thing, as Krishna mentioned, is that whether it's the homeless services team, whether it's working with Church at the Park and Mid-Willamette Valley, to get folks in there and try to connect people with resources. But this is it's a bigger issue than Salem, and it's a bigger issue than Oregon. And I travel a lot around the country, and I know other states are doing better at it than Oregon is. And so I think there's continued conversations all the way up to the State House about how to change the relationship with how we're managing it. Like, I think those conversations need to happen. But my approach is always ask, like, what's the Salem version of this problem? Like, am I solving a national problem, or am I solving a Salem problem? And that keeps me from, spinning out into things we don't have the ability to control in Salem, and controlling the things that we do.
And I would just add super fast, sorry, Tom, that conversation of the responsibility of the Department of Transportation. You could ask someone in Eugene, Salem, Portland, Bend, Roseburg, Medford. Everyone's having Colin and I, we know this. Everyone's having that same problem of Department of Transportation. This is your property. What are you doing? I think with this broader transportation conversation, it kind of gets wrapped up in, well, we have resources to do
Yeah.
that. We can't do that because we're just trying to maintain whatever, whatever that argument is. But I would suggest that it is a conversation that local communities, local business really needs to heavily weigh in as we're having this transportation conversation at the statewide level around what are we going to do with ODOT? How are we going to fund it? And what should they be doing? What is their responsibility? I would suggest, that it has to be an important part of the conversation because, like I tell my 9-year-old, it's your stuff, clean it up or I'm throwing it out of here. It's their responsibility and they need to be held accountable for it. And I think, to Tom's point, it's been really hard, particularly when you're dealing with one of the bigger state agencies, because it just, it keeps moving. The answers keep moving, trying to get an answer keeps moving. So how, local jurisdictions, communities, how local business is able to engage in that, I think will be really important as we're trying to build this transportation package in the 27 session.
We're going to do a couple more questions. We do have 10 minutes dedicated to Sheriff Hunter. I want to respect that along with a couple minutes of Q&A. We're doing fine time-wise, but I do want to pretty close to being wrapped up. Dick and then Jonathan.
Another comment, but just real quickly, we could move to McMinnville and Wilsonville. And having this going, I'm surprised being the oldest guy here.
Jonathan.
Okay, so no, I'm not done yet. Since I'm the oldest guy here, in 2009, Kulangoski had an idea of bringing public strategies groups here, how to do budgets for governments. There are 35 states that did this, and the idea was very simply was to not be funding departments as quotes, but to making results, making purchases for an ROI, changing the attitude of that.
And of the states that did this, 09, 6 of them in the next 2 years are doing away with their income tax. And the other 21 are planning that within the next 10 years because their managements have been ROI, in other words, making purchases. It's like when some of us give money to 501c3s, we don't give money to 501c3s. We make a purchase and we expect a result. So I think that's what we should do. We got to remember there's a crisis going on. You know, we're bottom 10 of the in state. So we need to have a little bit of being mad, you know, motivated, attitude, determined. We need to get something done because ER is in Portland, Seattle. When you have 2 examples of $670 million worth of building being sold in Seattle, sells for $200 million. And you have 25 million sold for 45 million. And both of those purchases think they paid 5 to 10 million too much. So, you know, I mean, we're in a crisis here. So we need to have a little bit of aggressiveness on getting things changed because this is the best place to live. It really is.
Jonathan?
Good morning, everyone. My question is for Councilor Paul Tigan. But before that, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. One of the things I appreciate about you is that you're always willing to talk about everyone. So, in addition to that, I also appreciate you and the current city councilors' support and regarding diversity and inclusion. I know that's something that a lot of the city councilors have voiced, especially in the past couple months. And recently, as you know, we have had a historical win in the city of Salem. In Ward 6, we elected the first ever Hispanic city councilwoman, Betsy Vega. So my question to you is, how did you celebrate that historical win for our city? And what does that mean for our city moving forward? Thank you.
I'll be honest that I stayed out of the election cycle this year. I didn't endorse any candidates and just let the process play out. I think we just recently got a determination from the city who the winner was. So I didn't really do anything to celebrate any of the election victories or not. So
for our city to have elected the first ever city councilwoman that's Hispanic, that's the first in the 100+ years of our city. What does that mean for our city?
Well, I think so. Away from my decision to or not to engage or celebrate, I think it's very important. You're creating, you're making your own point, which is that the broader we can make the table at the city council, the more voices that we can bring to it. I think the better results are going to be for the community. I think that I often personally reflect. My kids live in a very different Salem than I do. They go to North and Parish, and the Salem that I live in as a 46-year-old white guy looks a lot like me. But my kids, they're bilingual speakers. They went to Grant and have learned Spanish since they were in kindergarten, and the face of Salem is very different to them. And it's really important that they're engaging in it and that Salem is changing as well. And so making those voices available and having as broad of a table as we can is really important.
Now I'm going to have a counter that also speaks Spanish, just like your kids are trying to learn.
Yeah, that's great.
Brandon?
Just a quick follow-up. So maybe Sheriff Hunter run into this without a question as well, but if I talk to someone at ODOT and they say the bridge issue may then worsen, and that all properties across the state, maintenance of those properties does not stop law enforcement from going in and stopping illegal activity. Where's the gap in what's being spoken about, and is that factual?
I'm happy to answer that. You can look at all my notes. This was nothing to do with what I came here on. Talked about today. So ODOT, the main issue that exists with ODOT right now is their cleanup schedule. Many of you can look out to Staten, look to the city of Staten, and there used to be a park and ride in the city of Staten. That park and ride was generally abused. It was used for no good. There were people that did fishing trips. I'm sorry that we took away your parking ride. But The problem was that ODOT functions on a 6-week schedule. They will come to a location and they will not return to that location for 6 weeks. The other issue with that state and park and ride is that is state jurisdiction. So it really falls on the Oregon State Police to enforce in those areas. And we've been very careful, and I know the city of Salem, and you heard it from Krishna, we're being very careful that we don't enter into an agreement where we are now doing the job for the state. I just had this conversation with my legal counsel last night. I don't want to do the state's job for them. I want them to do their job. And this is not as much on OSP as it is on ODOT, but most of those locations, it gets set for, and they notice out that they're going to clean a location. My CARES team, several other teams are trying to assist with those. One of the things that ODOT is letting me down is that they say they're going to, in fact, mark a location to be cleared out, and then they fail to do so. And so we put in all this effort on the front end, only to have them tell us later, yeah, we can't do that one today because we didn't notice it. Not my problem, that's yours. And so in Staten, what we finally said was, if you cannot maintain this and you cannot keep this safe, then close it down. And that was a huge push from the Marion County commissioners, from the state and city councilors that just finally told ODOT, then get rid of the park and ride. And ODOT is closing park and rides all over the place because of this issue. But we are stuck in this battle of, I don't want to do ODOT's job. I don't want to give everyone the perception that I'm going to do ODOT's job. And to Tom's point, where are we going to put folks? Because we have a system that doesn't have accountability built into it for these folks. And so where you have a lack of motivation, and I know that I can move 20 feet to the left, wait for them to clean it up because they're here, and then they all drive away, and all I got to do is wait till tomorrow and I can move back in and build my camp again, problem never gets solved. We also have you've seen Market Street was a classic example. So Market Street, they put up the fencing. A lot of mixed views on the fencing. Some people say they don't like the way it looks. Some people are happy because it's generally keeping that population out. The natural things like rocks or boulders or other things that could be used as well, ODOT won't use. ODOT looks at the liability side, that if they put a boulder in that area and a crash now occurs in that area, that they have some liability for installing the boulder in that area. So that's where it goes to the fencing. We can continue to have this conversation all day long. The problem is ultimately what comes down to it is the accountability. It comes down to what happened in Idaho. It comes down to what happened in Grants Pass. It comes down to city attorneys, county attorneys, and everyone else interpreting what they think those two decisions say about what you can and can't do. And I will tell you, the county and the city disagree right now on those two decisions and what you can and can't do. But if we continue to foster an environment without accountability, we're going to go nowhere ultimately with this issue because there's no motivation for change. And I'm just meeting Lori, but Lori's here. One more thing. Lori's here and talking about that. But to get folks into treatment, you have to have a method to the madness to get them into treatment. I would love to say that we can walk into an area and, hey, you know what? Today is your lucky day. It is you today. You get to go to treatment. Hands go up in the air and they're like, I've been waiting for you to get here. No, that's not the brain, how the brain works. It's back to Nicole in the very beginning. We spent an entire 35 days of emotion over intellect over in the Dome building. You have to understand how the brain works. And if we're not going to educate these legislators, yet we expect to have a different result, we continue to fail at this. Then they're going to get into the Dome building and act in their midbrains. And in their midbrains, they're not being forced to get into their prefrontal cortex and actually make decisions. They just act on their convictions, their prejudices, their biases, and it screams emotion. And we fail there. So right now, Nicole's 100% right. We've already started. The DA-elect is sitting over there right now. We've already started on 2027 because if we want to see anything different, we've got to educate. And the same thing when we talk about how we're going to solve this problem of the homeless and things like that. There are educational pieces that we have to bring into these conversations, and people have to come along of what that looks like. Otherwise, we are just spinning our wheels, and give me a year, we'll come back and we'll have the same conversation right here about the same location downtown. Sorry, Tom.
Okay. I'm gonna ask for a 5-minute extension from all of you. That's very atypical, but these are important conversations and we're here in this room right now. You absolutely have to leave. We certainly understand. I apologize for the request of an extension. Councilor Tigan and City Manager Nambour, I have one for each of you, if you wouldn't mind. I am really a proponent of making sure our membership is aware of conversations coming on the revenue side. In January, thank you, by the way, for affording me the ability to give a little bit of a state of play for the small business community. And one of the requests we had, and it is on the backs of truly small business, was the request to do no harm. And could you give us an update, Councilor, on where we're at with conversations on the expansion of the operating fee specific to square footage on businesses? And I want to be real clear, folks, as a homeowner, you pay a greatly different percentage of the operating fee than you do as a business owner, including very large sites. Basically the ability to hook into the city services. Could you give us a brief update on where we sit there, Councilor?
Yeah, I would say that the city staff hasn't brought back to council any choices on how the operations fee could be adjusted in the way that we've requested. So we requested to the city staff to consider and bring us proposals for adjust the operations fee based on that, fundamental sense of fairness in terms of there's some payers who are, very large and use a lot of city services that are paying $70 a month. There's some that are very small, a single barbershop also pays $70 a month. And then homeowners and renters pay a fraction of that at $15 and $12 a month or something like that. So the idea was to, adjust that. The first thing that we had asked was for a no net revenue gain adjustment. And so that is the thing that's going to come to the city council. My understanding is that's going to be part of our revenue conversation. We have a revenue forecast work session scheduled for later August and September. So I haven't seen anything, and for reasons of our quorum and serial meetings and things like that, generally when I see it is when you see it. And so when it gets posted to a city website and for us to look at as council, that's when we get to start considering the details of it as well. So if we had more information, I'd share it, but at this point it's with city staff.
We got a little bit of there's a big key moment about a year ago, where the Chariots idea of the $40 million tax on Kaiser and Salem businesses came kind of into the bright light. We'd really like this one to be in the bright light from the beginning, so our businesses understand what we're taught, what they're potentially facing. Any help you could give us there. City Manager Nambour, just a quick update on, I know you're going through a sign code process. We have a lot of members who call us about that, engage with us. Could you give us a brief update on where we sit there?
Yeah, for sure. So the consultants are kind of working through the process, and I don't have the timeline, but August is when we are going to come back with some proposal, on how to kind of move forward with some changes.
If you haven't taken, they're also running a survey for another week. So if you haven't taken the survey about the sign code and your experience with it, that's really important to provide that information, because that's part of the, quote unquote discovery phase, though we know there's a lot already.
And you members have received that multiple times from our organization. We will do that one last time today in our business connector. Last question, Elizabeth.
To San Diego in September. ICIP, not the conflict centers. Trying to give to national tenants like what I'm doing. What are the first, what will be the full
I think one of the great things about Salem Center and downtown is that, well, I think about Ward 1 first. So sorry, apologies. What's that? Yeah, I understand that. I'm really excited about the growth in Salem, and about the growth in downtown Salem. I think we've got a lot of housing units coming online in downtown, and it's going to continue to build the vibrancy of downtown. We've got a new investment stream in safety. We're addressing the concerns, the things that we talked about. And so for me personally, there's a lot to quote unquote sell about Salem. I also think that overall there's people really enjoy it when they come here. We saw a recent report that, you know, listed Salem as one of the top 10 small cities in the country. I think the thing that was on the outside of that, it's really good for livability, but the idea of bringing more jobs into Salem is a continued concern, and that's something that we're working on too. So when we have people wanting to move into our shopping centers and create jobs, that's really positive. We want that. Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's please return our attention to Sheriff Hunter. Sheriff, take that.
You hit time. I'm happy to come back, and I'll come back and I'll bring the DA elect, because there's a couple issues that are out there. One is that Mink Bowman case that goes on that has been big. Many of you have been sort of versed on that multiple times, but we had stuff from Judge Mossman. Now we have stuff from Judge Nelson, and we are getting our hands tied even further, which is going to have a direct impact on all of your businesses in the community and things like that. But I think that's a more in-depth discussion, is why I don't want to necessarily broach that discussion. That I noticed those two clocks are wrong, just so you know. Or one of them's right. Looking at
Go
time
halfway in between.
Yeah, time wise, I think that unfortunately, if I get into this paper, there are probably some questions and other things that would be generated, and so I think the time would be better if we came back and did this at the next one.
Very fair. We'll key that up next month, and I apologize for that. It's a little bit chess on how much time we're going to do. I was actually looking at this going, oh, we may get done early today. That'll be fun.
So we are on the panel. Popular.
You were very popular.
Turn.
Well, Sheriff, you extending this time to us today and then us not getting your full presentation, just know on behalf of our organization how much we appreciate the work you and your team are doing. Very present in our community and very common sense. I'd like to make you aware just of a few things as we close out today. Topics that we have coming up for you to be tracking. Front Street development and the Cannery project. It's very exciting. IP 28, criminalizing hunting, will be on your November ballot. Data centers, what they mean to communities that they're coming into and how communities are reacting to them. I'd like to remind you at the end of this month, our ELC annual luncheon will be occurring at West Hills Winery. If you are curious about what that is, it may mean you're not at that level of membership. We'd love the opportunity to talk to you about your investment with this organization. And we really feel we drive some incredible ROI for you. Please connect with Jack on that. Lastly, I want to remind everybody, when you drive around town and look at where you want to eat, the state offices are vacant. People are working from home. Our restaurants dearly need your support right now. Absolutely dearly. Myself and past President Ferry had the opportunity, and President Williams, to dine downtown at a business you all know and love. And there were 4 individuals at the lunch hour in that business. That is not viable. Make your choices correctly. Stop going through fast food lines. Get out of national chains. We need these businesses. They have been there forever. And then we experience a shock and awe. Oh, Tom, I can't believe that restaurant closed. That's on us to make our choices appropriately. I thank you all for being here today. Panel, wonderful job. Great information today. Thank you for investing your time with the Salem Chamber. All of you have a wonderful afternoon.